This video contains elements that are not suitable for children under the age of 14. Viewer discretion is advised.
"2007 marked the release of the first Railway Series book since Will and Audrey's death a decade prior, Thomas and Victoria. As I explained during the overview for Series 5, the book was going to be published back in 1997, but it was shelved once Bert Allcroft bought the rights from William Heinemann. So who knows what Christopher Audrey could have come up with had Thomas and Victoria actually been published back then? Could Barry's book have finally been published and we would have actually gotten to see what his character was like?
The world may never know.
So what was Thomas and Victoria about? Well, once again returning to Thomas's branch line, as if we didn't have enough books featuring it already, the Farquhar team were joined by an old furnace railway coach called Victoria, who became a part of Toby's vintage train alongside Toby himself and Henrietta, the latter of whom was seen for the first time with a face. She wouldn't gain a face on TV for another 7 years, but we'll get to that later. Moving on to the TV series at hand, Series 11 was one for many firsts and lasts. In the case for the latter, it was the last series to exclusively use resin cast faces, as well as be a models-only series, while Series 12 would be the transitional series from models to CGI. A couple of scenes from Thomas and the Stinky Cheese were used as a test to see how the show could look in CGI, and oh my goodness, has it aged horribly. I know I should cut some slack. I mean, nobody's expecting it to be Pixar quality, but I think we should be glad that even now, the animation is nothing like that. Don't Be Silly Billy was also considered for animation tests, but they never came to pass. Probably a good thing too, and I'll get to why soon enough. Series 11 was intended to be the last series for long-standing narrators of the United Kingdom and the United States, Michael Angelis and Michael Brandon, respectively. They were going to be replaced in both dubs by Irish-American James Bond actor Pierce Brosnan up to at least Series 14, but for unknown reasons, he left after The Great Discovery, bringing back both Michaels for 5 more series. This would leave the aforementioned special Brosnan's sole narrative contribution to the show. We may never know why he left, but did Pierce ask for too much money? Or maybe he was too busy with other projects at the time. Who knows? As you would expect by this point, new characters were introduced to Series 11, with the only one making it to the CGI series being Whiff the Rubbish Engine. There's just something I don't get here. People criticizing because he wears glasses? We've had the ballast cleaner from the Railway series wear glasses too on the wooden railway model, and nobody freaked out then. Can someone fill me in on why? I just don't get it. But I do like the look of Whiff, and that he doesn't seem to care what others think about his appearance. He even says so himself in his debut episode.
My name's Whiff, because I'm a bit smelly.
Oh yeah, and side note, Emily's Rubbish is one of the worst episode titles in the show. I much prefer to call it by the US title, Emily and the Garbage. It just sounds less offensive in my opinion. Anyway, considering Whiff was in the CGI series, there is a lot they could have done with him. Maybe have him take on other jobs away from garbage collecting? Given that his basis was a passenger engine back in her day, what about taking a passenger train for the first time by himself? He didn't appear very frequently in the Burner era, so what's the deal here? While Whiff did make it into the CGI series, someone else almost did, but thankfully that didn't happen, and considering the reboot, probably never will. That being Prototype Charlie, aka Billy.
Thomas, huffed Billy, stop telling me what to do. You are a very bossy engine.
Ugh, I hate this little brat so much. Every time he opens his stupid fat mouth, I just want to punch him in the nose. He acted like an ungrateful bastard around Thomas when he tries to help him out. Combine that with the Three Strikes formula, it makes for a painful experience and the worst introductory episode since Edward Strikes Out, which was literally in the last series, and by the same writer no less. Even a child learning to share for the first time isn't as horrible as Billy was in his only episode. Apart from cloning Charlie's render to make him, what would Billy even add to the show?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
Exactly. I just see no potential in him whatsoever, and the only time I want to see him come back to the show is if he was being ripped apart by Diesel 10. Now, Billy almost did return for Series 13 in Splish Splash Splosh, but thankfully, they dodged a bullet and used Charlie instead. I'll be glad if Billy never returns to the show. Fuck this infuriating little brat!
You are a very... Shut up!
Thank you.
You're not the only one to hate that buck-toothed brat, Zack. I hate him just as much as you do.
You are a very...
Even then, there are 3 characters whom I hate even more. But it's way too early for me to say who they are.
Yeah, I get it. Now do me a favor, Matt. Let me do the review in peace before I throw you out again. Now that that's out of the way, who's next?
Keep away! roared Hector.
Ah, yes. Hector the Hopper. After the worst Series 11 newbie, we get the best of the bunch. Hector had a really good character arc for the 2 episodes he appeared in. He started off very aggressive, but after Thomas gave him a good hard bump, Hector revealed that he acted this way because he was scared of being filled up with coal. The vent saw it wasn't so scary after all. An episode from the Barla era that tackled the issue of bullying far better than Apology Impossible did 11 years later? How the hell is that possible? Anyway, in his next and final appearance, Hector gives James some advice when it comes to handling snowy weather, which further showcased his character growth. Would I have wanted him to return to the show? Absolutely. As one of the few trucks in the NWR that isn't troublesome, Hector could definitely add some variety to the yards, not just in size either. Plus, maybe he could have paved the way to give more trucks some individual personalities. Lastly, there's Madge the Snub-Nosed Lorry, the only Series 11 newbie to appear in more than one episode in said series, yet after appearing in The Great Discovery, she hasn't appeared since. We do, however, get glimpses of her wanting to play things safe in snowy conditions, and seeing her act motherly toward the little engines, even if Scarlet and Aeneas are technically older, but I digress. So why hasn't she been expanded upon since then? If you wanted more field representation in the show, they could have brought Madge back into the show and still have her work alongside the Scarlet engines. That seemed like a pretty good win-win scenario there if you ask me. And speaking of the Scarlet engines, a whole DVD was dedicated to them in October 2007, about a month after the rest of Series 11 had aired on television in the United Kingdom. Engines and Escapades featured 6 episodes that would not air on television until January 2008, a practice that would later be repeated for Series 17 to 20. At the time, releasing 6 episodes at once and marketing them as DVD exclusive was quite the novelty. I'm not counting Series 3 and 4, despite them being released on VHS first for the record. But sadly, the episodes were subpar for the most part, with the Madge episodes being the only good ones on the DVD, while the rest were just forgettable. The only other exclusive thing on the DVD was the only new song in Series 11, dedicated to the Scarlet 6 plus Mighty Mac and Freddy.
They are the Narrowgauge engines, running on a Narrowgauge track. Friends like Rusty, Duncan, Fearless, Freddy, Mighty Mac.
While Series 11 was broadcast on Milkshake, Dirty Work, not the one from Series 2 obviously, Hector the Horrid, Thomas and the Spaceship, Don't Be Silly Billy, and Hide and Peep all had some scenes that differed from the half-hour airings on PBS Kids for the United States and Nick Jr. for the United Kingdom. The scenes are generally on the same sets as the original, but each are at different angles. Save for Series 1, which had some notorious restoration mistakes, while Series 2 through 3 didn't have as many, I don't recall any other series having refilmed footage for certain episodes. Series 11 was the first to have Christopher Scala as executive producer, and would remain in this position until the first half of Series 15. Meanwhile, this was also the last series to have Sharon Miller as script editor before she became head writer for Series 12 through 16. And believe me when I say it gets worse from here. 9 through 11 had their share of bad episodes, Series 10 especially, but they paled compared to the awful episodes Series 12 through 16 brought out. Except maybe Edward Strikes Out, but we'll see when I get to them. The theme song was given a revamp so that the lyrics to the engine roll call would play to introduce the show, most likely to go along with the refilmed scenes for the intro, with the last shot of Thomas going under the bridge being refilmed to include CGI elements, and as explained, it was later reanimated entirely for CGI and would remain that way until Series 18. So how does Series 11 compare to the last 3 series? Well, it's better than Series 10, but not by much, but it's still worse than Series 8 and 9. Without Billy's debut episode, I think it would probably be on par with the latter two, while Series 10 would still be stone dead last for the model series. But how will Series 12 compare to all 4? That is something we shall find out next Monday.
Surprises, surprises, they come all shapes and sizes. You never know what's round the bend, it might delight, it might offend.